Today's story is not about knights and castles, nor about kings and great deeds. This is a dark, detailed, and ironic look into the ordinary, everyday life of someone rarely mentioned in textbooks. A medieval wet nurse. From morning till night, her day is endless toil, heavy cleaning, laundry, cooking, non-stop serving of the masters, and caring for someone else's baby, a child for whom she must forget about her own. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is right now. I am really curious to see who's joining us today. Now, settle in and get cozy. We're about to begin. You wake before the sun. It is not a gentle waking, no sweet chirping of birds or warm sunbeams on your face. No, your alarm is the clanging of the church bell, ringing through the freezing air with the subtlety of a drunken blacksmith. Every muscle aches from sleeping on a straw mattress, if you could even call it a mattress. It is more like a bundle of scratchy, half-rotten stalks, generously shared with a collection of nimble bugs and fleas, and maybe even a mouse or two, depending on how lucky you are that week. The room is pitch dark, except for a faint, sickly glow from the dying embers in the hearth. Your nose is numb, your toes are numb, and so are most of your dreams, frozen by the reality of another day. There is barely enough space to stretch. Your bed is shoved into a corner with your knees poking the wall and your back pressed to another body, sometimes your own child, sometimes another servant. Privacy is a foreign concept. If you need to relieve yourself, you must shuffle past a half dozen legs, clutching your thin, fraying shift around you as you search for the chamber pot, provided it is not already full. If it is, you must stumble out into the icy yard where the wind is only slightly less forgiving than your master's temper. Outside, the morning is not much better. The ground is always either muddy or frozen, never anything in between. The air is thick with the smells of smoke, manure, and unwashed humanity. You glance at the horizon, but there is no beautiful sunrise, only a thin gray line where the night has decided it has done enough damage for one day. You shiver, rubbing your arms to chase away the cold, but it clings to you like a curse, settling into your bones. Soon the other bodies in the room begin to stir, groaning and coughing, hacking up the dust and sickness that always seems to settle overnight. Nobody greets the day with joy. Instead, there are grumbles, sniffles, and the wet, rattling cough of someone who will not last the winter. No one dares complain out loud. That would be inviting trouble. You know well enough to keep your head down and your mouth shut. You listen for the steps above. If you are unlucky enough to serve in a larger household, the footsteps of your betters will thunder through the floorboards, shaking down the cold ash and reminding you who owns everything, even the air you breathe. But you have no time to dwell on your lot. The day demands your obedience, and there is always a list of things to do before you are even allowed to sit down. Bread must be started, fire must be tended, water must be fetched. And of course, there is the infant, your true charge, your waking purpose. But before you can nurse anyone, you must nurse the day itself into grudging existence. You look at the people you sleep beside, sometimes family, sometimes strangers, always poor. You share their warmth and their misery, and there is no hope of privacy, dignity, or rest. This is the only world you know. The thought occurs to you, as it does every morning, that you will almost certainly die in a room just like this one, maybe in this very spot. No one will remember your name, except perhaps to curse it if you let the bread burn or the infant wail too long. You sigh. It is not a sigh of hope or even despair. It is simply the sound of another day beginning, exactly like every other day that came before. You wonder, with bitter amusement, how many mornings you have left. Probably more than you want, and fewer than you deserve. You do not have the luxury of a slow morning. Before the dawn is fully upon you, before your own mind is even awake, you are already at work. The first task is always the fire, because the fire is everything. If it has gone out, you will be cursed, and if you cannot rekindle it, you will be beaten, sometimes with words, sometimes with more than words. You crouch in front of the cold stones, feeling your breath billow out in little ghosts. You curse the damp wood under your breath, knowing you should have dried it better yesterday, but knowing also that the weather never listens to anyone's prayers, least of all yours. You blow and coax, you scrape and curse, and sometimes the spark catches. The acrid smoke stings your eyes, clings to your hair, fills your lungs. The scent will never leave your skin, no matter how much you wash. If you are lucky, the flames begin to dance, licking the iron pot. If you are unlucky, you start again, 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 while the others grumble behind you about the chill and the dark. No one thanks you if the fire starts. They will only blame you if it does not. Once the fire is alive, the next task is water. The well is not far, but in the muddy yard, every step is a negotiation with the filth of the world, slippery, sticky, clinging to your feet, threatening to suck you down. The bucket is heavy even before you fill it. You shiver, even though you are already sweating. You do not dare spill any water, not with so many thirsty mouths waiting. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of your own reflection in the rippling surface, pale, tired, lips chapped, eyes rimmed in red. You look older than you are. Everyone here does. Back inside, you heave the water onto the rough-hewn table. Already there are others demanding your attention. A child wails, a crone coughs, your own stomach protests the emptiness that never seems to go away. You have not eaten yet, but you will be expected to prepare food for others before you may even think of a crust for yourself. Flour is precious, so the bread you make is coarse and gray, mixed with whatever is cheapest this season: oats, beans, sometimes even a little sawdust or ground up nutshells, if the harvest was bad. You knead it with aching arms, feeling the grit scrape your skin. The dough sticks under your fingernails, refuses to come off no matter how much you scrub. There is no yeast, just sour remnants of yesterday's loaf. The smell is not appetizing, but it is the smell of leaf, such as it is. You chop vegetables if there are any left, usually turnips or onions, sometimes a limp carrot or two if you are lucky. There is rarely meat unless an animal has died. Eggs are for the masters. You boil everything in water, watching the lumps swirl, watching the color turn from hopeful to hopelessly gray. When you taste it, it is bland at best, bitter at worst. But you eat anyway, because hunger does not care about flavor. You are not just cooking for yourself, of course. There are always more mouths than food. The master and mistress upstairs, the other servants, the children, sometimes even beggars or wandering monks. Everyone expects you to provide, but no one expects you to eat. You dole out portions with practiced hands, making sure to save the best for those who can punish you and the worst for those who will only complain. You eat last, licking the spoon when no one is looking, scraping the pot for crumbs. Then there is the cleaning, always the cleaning. Ashes to be swept, floors to be scrubbed, pots to be scoured. The water is freezing. Your knuckles are raw. Your back aches. You try not to think about how many times you have done this, how many times you will do it again. No matter how hard you scrub, the dirt never really goes away. It just shifts around, waiting for you to notice it again. You look at your hands, red and swollen, nails broken and bleeding. They are not the hands you once had. You barely remember what your hands used to look like. Soft, perhaps, or maybe just less damaged. Now they are working hands, servants' hands, wet nurses' hands, hands that are always busy, always tired, always empty. In the corner, a rat scurries across the floor, bold as any lord. You sigh. It will be your job to set the traps tonight, to dispose of whatever you catch, to clean the blood and filth. You do not have time to be afraid of rats. Fear is a luxury, too, and through it all, there is the knowledge that this is only the beginning of the day. You have not yet fed the infant, not yet faced the masters, not yet begun the real work that will fill every hour until the bells ring again for night. You are already exhausted, already hungry, already defeated. But you keep going because there is no other choice. The day is only just beginning, and it will not wait for you. You barely have time to scrape the dough off your hands before the first summons comes. A door slams somewhere upstairs, loud enough to startle the chickens outside and the servants inside. You recognize the sound. The master's wife is awake, and her infant, your infant now, by duty if not by choice, has decided to announce his hunger with the full power of baby lungs. You do not run, because running is unseemly, but you do not dawdle either. Everyone knows what happens to a wet nurse who lets the child cry for too long. You pause only to pull your shift here over your breast, to wipe your nose with the corner of your sleeve, to make yourself as presentable as a woman can be after hours by the fire and a morning spent scrubbing. Then you climb the narrow wooden stairs, every step creaking a different complaint under your bare, cold feet. The nursery is a world apart. Here, the windows are sometimes glass, not just holes stuffed with rags. There are rugs on the floor, thin, but still rugs, and on the walls, faded tapestries depicting scenes of saints or battles or, most ironically, motherhood. The air smells faintly of lavender, though you know this is only to mask the odors that infants produce with astonishing enthusiasm. The mistress is there, pale and thin, wrapped in wool and worry. She gives you a look that is neither friendly nor hostile, simply expectant, as if you are no more remarkable than the pitcher on her washstand. The infant is screaming. You know this scream. It is the only thing that has power here, the one true master of the house. You take the baby, awkwardly at first. You always think of your own, the ones left behind or buried under two shallow stones, but you do not let this show. The mistress is watching. She judges everything, the way you hold the child, the way you soothe him, the way you bare your breast, as if it is not something you should be ashamed of. The child roots and latches, mouth hungry and searching. The pain is sharp at first, every single time, like being pinched from the inside out. You close your eyes, thinking of fields in the spring, or the warmth of a fire that is not made of smoke and desperation. But the pain is necessary, even comforting in a way. It means you are still useful, still needed, still alive. You watch the infant's eyelids flutter, his fists clench and unclench, his body relax by inches as hunger gives way to drowsiness. Sometimes, in these moments, you let yourself believe you are more than a body with milk, more than a pair of hands and breasts. You are a mother again, if only for a moment, if only to someone else's child. You try to remember what your own babies smelled like, how their hair felt, the way they smiled when they saw you. But your memory fails you, worn down by too many hungry mouths, too many early graves. The mistress clears her throat, and the moment passes. She asks questions she already knows the answers to. Did the baby feed well? Was he fussy last night? Has your own milk changed in taste or thickness? You give polite, careful replies. You do not mention the thinness of your own meals, the nights you wake with cramps so sharp you almost cry. The mistress does not want to know these things. She only wants to be reassured, to know that her child is getting what he needs. You burp the baby, patting his back with practiced hands. The mistress looks at you as if she is trying to decide whether you are trustworthy or just tolerable. She does not thank you. She does not meet your eyes. You are part of the scenery here, like the old dog by the fire or the girl who sweeps the steps. There is always a risk, unspoken but understood. If the baby grows sick, if he fails to thrive, if anything happens at all, everyone will look to you first. You have heard the stories of wet nurses blamed for witchcraft, for curses, for all manner of misfortune. Sometimes you wonder if the mistress secretly hopes for something to go wrong, just so she has someone to punish. You wonder if you would do the same in her place. You finish, adjusting your shift and handing the baby back. Your breasts ache, full and sore, but you do not complain. You will be summoned again soon, maybe in an hour, maybe in 3. In the meantime, there is more work, always more work, waiting below. You make your way down the stairs, your thoughts as heavy as your steps. Sometimes you whisper a prayer as you go, not for yourself, but for the baby in your arms, the ones you have lost and the ones you have left behind. It is all you can do. It is never enough. You descend the stairs again, your arms still remembering the weight of a child not your own, your chest still aching from being drained for another family's survival. There is a coldness that settles deep inside you, a hollowness sharper than the morning's hunger. It is not just physical exhaustion, it is the ache of remembering your own children, the ones you cannot hold, cannot nurse, cannot even watch as they grow, if they grow at all. Somewhere in a cottage miles from this house, your own blood cries for you. You do not hear them, but you imagine their voices echoing in the cold dark. You left them in the care of your mother, or a cousin, or perhaps a neighbor's wife, because there was no other way. When the master's messenger came with the offer, milk and coin in exchange for your time, your body, your motherhood, you had no room for pride or hesitation. There is nothing romantic about sacrifice when it is simply survival. You think of your youngest, a daughter born small and sickly, always fighting for breath. The memory of her thin fingers clinging to yours haunts you, especially on days when your own breasts feel too full and sore, and you know she is going hungry so that another woman's child might thrive. You wonder sometimes whether she will live to see the next season. You have buried children before. Each grave is as shallow as the earth is hard, and marked by little more than a stone and a mother's broken promise to remember. If you are unlucky, your child dies while you are away. If you are lucky, you hear the news in a letter scratched by someone else's hand, the words awkward and clumsy, heavy with the guilt that does not belong to them. Sometimes the message is not written at all. Sometimes you find out when you finally return, only to see a mound of earth you did not dig, or a tiny set of clothes tucked away out of sight. There are no words for that grief, so you swallow it whole, let it settle deep and cold, another stone in your belly. The village women know this pain too. You talk in whispers by the well, or on market day if you are lucky enough to leave the house. You trade stories about whose milk is drying up, whose child fell ill, whose master is the stingiest or the cruelest. It is a language of loss and endurance. You pretend that sharing it makes it lighter, but it never does. Sometimes you allow yourself the fantasy that your child will grow strong in your absence, that you are buying her a future with every coin you earn here. But you know the truth. The money is never enough. It is spent before it is earned on bread, on fuel, on threadbare shoes, on a roof that still leaks, and a garden that never yields enough. You are always paying off yesterday's debts, never building tomorrow's hope. You remember the first time you left your newborn to serve as a wet nurse. She wailed for you, and your own breasts leaked in sympathy, soaking your shift in a silent, sticky grief. The mistress's baby latched and drank greedily, while your own child starved on watered milk or gruel made from ground beans and whatever else your mother could find. You have not forgiven yourself for that. You do not expect to. When the master or mistress asks about your family, you answer carefully. You say they are well or getting by, even when you have not heard from them in weeks. To complain would be ungrateful. To show too much emotion would be unseemly. You are not here as a mother, after all. You are here as a service, a body, a solution to someone else's problem. In rare, stolen moments, you imagine what it would be like to nurse your own child, to watch her fatten and grow, to see her cheeks flush with life. You imagine singing to her in the quiet of the evening, rocking her until she falls asleep in your arms, her breath soft and safe against your skin. But these are dangerous dreams. You banish them as quickly as they come, afraid that longing will show in your face, that the mistress will see and grow jealous or suspicious. The work is endless, but it is the waiting that hurts most. The waiting for news, for letters, for a familiar footstep at the gate. Every day you serve another family's future, while your own slips further away from you, grain by grain, like flour through your fingers. Sometimes, at night, you lie awake and listen to the distant howl of wolves. You envy them their hunger, their certainty, their wildness. You wonder if your own children still remember the sound of your voice, the warmth of your arms. You wonder if you will ever see them again, or if, when you finally return, you will find nothing but another grave to dig. But you get up every morning anyway, because hope is a habit you cannot break, and despair is a luxury you cannot afford. So you serve, and you wait, and you grieve in silence, while the world turns as indifferently as ever. You do not remember a day when your hands were not busy. The work follows you from room to room, from hour to hour, settling on your shoulders with the weight of inevitability. You do not own your time. You do not own your labor. Everything is dictated by the rhythms of the household, by the tolling of the church bell, the rising and setting of the sun, the whims of the master and mistress, and above all, by the needs of the infant you must keep alive. After nursing, you return to the kitchen, which is less a room and more a battlefield. It is always too hot or too cold, filled with the stink of old grease, sour milk, and the lingering, ever present aroma of wood smoke. The walls are black with soot, the floor sticky with spilled broth and trodden dirt. The table is covered in crumbs, and the evidence of countless failed meals, gnawed clean by mice that fear neither trap nor boot. Your hands are raw from scrubbing the heavy iron pots, from scraping burnt porridge, from wringing out rags in water so cold it burns your skin. You kneel to sweep the ashes from the hearth, your knees aching, your back bent. The dust rises and settles in your hair, behind your eyes, in the creases of your skin. Sometimes you pause, hoping for a breath of clean air, but there is none to be found in this place. The kitchen is alive with labor, but dead to comfort. There are always more chores than hours. You chop vegetables, such as they are, turnips with worms inside, onions already sprouting green shoots, cabbages smelling faintly of rot. If you are lucky, there is a thin bone to flavor the soup, but more often you are left with nothing but water and salt, and even salt is rationed. You count out every scrap of bread, making certain to save the largest slices for those upstairs. Sometimes, when no one is looking, you snatch a crust for yourself, chewing quickly, swallowing before you can taste the mold or the bitterness. After cooking, you clean again, because there is never a moment when something is not dirty. Dishes are washed with sand and cold water, your knuckles scraped and bleeding. The floor must be swept, the benches wiped, the table cleared of crumbs. Someone is always spilling, always dropping, always leaving a trail of filth for you to follow. You wonder if anyone else even notices the dirt, or if it is visible only to those condemned to clean it. Laundry is another never ending battle. There is a pile of petticoats and shirts stained with sweat and spit, and worse, tiny baby linens soiled almost as soon as they are washed, aprons stiff with grease. You haul buckets to the yard, scrubbing the cloth against rough boards, beating it with a stick, twisting it until your arms throb. Your breath comes in clouds, your skirts soaked to the thigh, your hands bright red and aching. Sometimes the cold is so sharp you weep without meaning to, tears freezing on your cheeks before they have the chance to fall. Once, perhaps, you thought of yourself as a person with a name. Here, you are known by your labor, the one who cooks, the one who scrubs, the one who feeds the child. Your own name is used only when someone is shouting at you, and even then it sounds strange, foreign, a word from a different world. You speak little because there is little time and even less reason to talk. Words do not scrub the floor or soothe a wailing infant. Evenings are no better. As the sun sets, the light in the kitchen fades, replaced by the flickering, smoky glow of a tallow candle or the red eyes of the hearth. Shadows gather in the corners, dancing with the mice and the cockroaches. You move through the darkness by memory, your feet learning the pattern of the room, your hands finding the familiar weight of every pot and knife and rag. There is comfort in repetition, perhaps, but no joy. Occasionally, the mistress visits the kitchen, wrinkling her nose at the smells, her shoes leaving muddy prints that you will scrub clean. She may inspect your work, find it wanting, issue a command or a complaint. You nod, keeping your eyes down, knowing better than to answer back. In her eyes, you are not a woman, but an extension of her will, a tool for keeping her house in order and her child alive. By night, you are exhausted, your limbs heavy, your eyes burning, but there is always one more thing to do: a pot to scrub, a rag to wring, a child to feed. The work never ends. It only changes shape as the day turns. You collapse onto your straw mat, surrounded by the smell of smoke and sweat and damp, knowing that in a few short hours it will all begin again. You wonder sometimes how many days you have lived like this, how many more are left. The answer does not matter. There is only the next task, the next chore, the next command. You survive because you must, because there is no other choice, because survival is the only rebellion you can afford. You spend your days moving through spaces that are never yours, under the eyes of people for whom you are never quite real. The masters, always the masters, never just people, exist on a different plane, their lives cushioned by comforts you can barely imagine, their problems as far removed from yours as the stars are from the mud. Still, your existence orbits around theirs, and every moment of your life is shaped by their whims, their moods, and above all, their judgment. You are always visible, and yet you are always invisible. The mistress, with her hands wrapped in fine wool and her hair smelling of soap you will never touch, sees you only as a set of tasks to be completed. She measures you by your usefulness, your silence, your willingness to obey. Sometimes she will not look at you at all, her eyes passing over you as if you were a shadow or a stain on the wall. When she does look, it is with a gaze that weighs, calculates, and dismisses. The master is more unpredictable, which is worse. There are days when he ignores you completely, and you are grateful. On other days, he offers a joke you do not dare to laugh at, or a question you do not know how to answer. Sometimes you feel his gaze linger too long, his eyes crawling over your skin in a way that makes you wish you were even more invisible. You have heard stories from the other women, whispered in the safety of the laundry room or the corner of the yard. Stories of hands that wander where they should not, of threats and bargains, of the terrible price of saying no. Humiliation is as much a part of your uniform as your apron. You are never allowed to forget your place. The clothes you wear are cast offs, patched, stained, too large or too small. The food you eat is whatever is left, if there is anything left at all. You speak only when spoken to, and even then, your words are measured, careful, small. You learn to bow your head, to lower your eyes, to step aside. Your opinions are neither asked for nor wanted, unless they can be used as an excuse for someone else's mistake. Punishments are swift and rarely fair. A missed chore, a broken dish, a moment of clumsiness. Any of these can bring down anger or contempt. The mistress is fond of sharp words, delivered in the icy tone of someone who believes herself above reproach. The master is more direct, a cuff to the head, a shout, sometimes worse. There are no witnesses, and even if there were, no one would side with you. In this house, as in every house, the word of the master is law. But the greatest fear is not violence, it is dismissal. To be cast out means hunger, sickness, perhaps death. The threat is always there, hanging in the air like the smell of rot in the cellar. You work not only for your own survival, but for your families, for the children you left behind, for the hope that one day you might earn enough to bring them a better life. The masters know this. They remind you of it when you ask for anything: money, time, mercy. Remember where you would be without us, they say, as if you could ever forget. Sometimes the mistress will call you into the parlor when guests are present. She will introduce you as the wet nurse in the same tone she uses for the dog or the silverware. You stand in the corner holding the baby while fine ladies and gentlemen peer at you as if you are some strange beast. They ask personal questions about your age, your milk, your own children, questions they would never ask each other. You answer as best you can, knowing that your words will be repeated and twisted long after you leave the room. There are moments of kindness, too, but they are rare and uncertain. A smile, a word of thanks, a small gift at a festival. You never trust these moments. You know they can be snatched away as quickly as they are offered. The next day, the same hand that gave you a ribbon can snatch away your food, your dignity, your place in the household. You learn to hide your anger, your grief, your hope. You smile when expected, bow when commanded, laugh when it is safe. The other servants teach you this: how to survive without drawing attention, how to accept what cannot be changed, how to hold on to the small pieces of yourself that no one can take. And all the while, the baby's cries cut through the house, reminding you of your purpose, your usefulness, your worth. You are not a person, not really. You are a role, a set of hands, a body with milk and muscles, and no voice of your own. Sometimes, at night, you dream of running away, of finding a place where no one knows your name or your station, where you can breathe without fear. But the dreams fade with the morning light, and the reality of your place in the world presses down once more, as heavy and cold as the stone walls of the master's house. You live with sickness the way you live with cold or hunger. It is always present, woven into the very air you breathe. In this household, disease is as familiar as the sound of the church bell, as ordinary as sweeping the floor. Every cough, every rash, every fever carries the threat of disaster, and you learn quickly that there is no safety, only degrees of danger. The baby you nurse is fragile, always teetering on the edge of some new ailment. A single sneeze is enough to set everyone on edge, to send the mistress into fits of panic, to make the master's mood curdle like spoiled milk. You are blamed first, always. If the child spits up, it is your fault. If he develops a rash, it is something you did or failed to do. You are the first to be questioned, the first to be suspected, the first to be accused. Washing is supposed to keep the sickness away, but what is the use of water so cold it makes your bones ache? And what is the use of washing when the rags themselves are never quite clean? You wash your hands as best you can, but the soap is precious and rarely spared for a servant. Your nails are always rimmed with the gray of kitchen grease and garden mud. Your sleeves are crusted with old milk, baby spit, and the blood from chapped, broken skin. The nursery is not immune. In the dark corners, dust gathers and cobwebs tangle with the fine things brought in for the baby's comfort. The sheets, however often you change them, grow damp and sour with sweat, urine, and the faint coppery smell of sickness. The air is thick with the scent of wet wool, spilled broth, and the acrid reek of the chamber pot. You try to keep everything clean, but disease seeps through walls, slips under doors, and settles in the folds of clothing and the cracks of the floorboards. You have seen enough to know the signs, the flushed cheeks and shivering limbs of fever, the raw red ring of a rash, the way a cough can grow deeper and wetter until it rattles in the chest like stones in a bucket. Sometimes the baby's eyes go glassy and dull, or his belly swells with colic. Sometimes nothing you do can comfort him, and you rock him for hours, singing softly, your voice little more than a whisper, praying that he will survive the night. When illness comes, the mistress blames you for bringing it, even though you rarely leave the house and have only your own battered health to share. The master sends for the village healer, who arrives with pockets full of dried herbs and muttered prayers. You watch as she prepares foul smelling teas, as she waves smoke over the child's cradle, as she draws lines in ash across the baby's brow. Sometimes she cuts onions and hangs them above the door, believing they will draw out the evil. Sometimes she bleeds the child or gives him potions that make him sicker still. If you yourself fall ill, you do your best to hide it. You force yourself out of bed, clutching the walls for support, moving slowly so that no one notices how badly you are shivering. You cannot risk being discovered. There is no pity for a sick servant. If the mistress suspects you are unwell, she will send you away, and there will be no one to care for the baby, no coin sent home to your family, no food to fill your belly. Worse, she may accuse you of bringing a curse into the house, of harboring demons in your blood. You know the stories. Wet nurses cast out into the snow with nothing but the rags on their backs, accused of witchcraft because a child died in the night. Women beaten or drowned, not because they were guilty, but because someone had to take the blame. Disease is not just a threat to your body, it is a threat to your life, your name, your soul. Your own ailments are many and varied. Your breasts swell and ache. the skin cracked and sometimes bleeding. Your joints throb from the endless labor and the cold. You develop sores that never seem to heal, small infections that eat away at your flesh. Your teeth are loose, your gums raw. Some mornings, your head pounds so fiercely you cannot see straight, but you go about your duties anyway, hoping no one will notice. There is no real medicine. Sometimes the mistress offers you a scrap of linen for a poultice, a spoonful of honey if you are coughing, a prayer if you are dying. Most of the time, you are left to heal or rot on your own. You rely on superstition, garlic worn around the neck, herbs hidden in your bodice, whispered charms against the evil eye. You trust in luck more than faith, because faith has never kept you safe from illness or its consequences. And so you live in constant fear, not just for yourself, but for the child in your arms. Every sickness is a test, every recovery a small miracle, every death a reminder of your own fragility. You measure your days by the times you do not cough, by the nights you do not wake sweating or shivering, by the hope that you will survive long enough to send another coin home, to see your own children again, to outlast the sickness that surrounds you, but you know better than to expect mercy from the world or its diseases. Here, you are always one breath away from blame, one cough away from ruin. Survival is a matter of chance, and chance rarely favors women like you. Food is never a pleasure, it is a necessity you chase, but never quite catch. Every day you eat not to enjoy, but to avoid the sickness of hunger, a sickness you know as intimately as the ache in your hands or the sting of your raw feet. Your world is measured in crumbs and scraps, in mouthfuls barely enough to call a meal, and you long ago lost the luxury of taste. Breakfast, when there is one, is little more than stale bread. The loaf is hard, baked days ago, and already crawling with the beginnings of mold. You scrape away the green spots and hope for the best. The bread crumbles in your hands, falls apart in your mouth, but you force it down because it is all there is. Sometimes the crust is so tough you must soak it in weak ale to chew it at all, and sometimes you break a tooth and have to work the rest of the day with a throbbing ache in your jaw. It is the same bread, day after day, week after week, a flavorless companion in your endless routine. If you are lucky, someone remembered to save a heel of cheese from the master's table. The cheese is sharp, sour, and crawling with blue veins. You close your eyes and bite down, grateful for the tang, even as your stomach twists. Once you might have been disgusted, but now any taste at all is a blessing. You remember the stories the old women told about banquets, about fresh fruit and roast meats, about honey and cream and cakes so sweet they made your teeth ache for days. You laugh at these stories now, not with joy, but with the bitter humor of someone who knows such things were never meant for you. Most days, the main meal is a watery pottage, vegetables if they are in season, roots and beans when they are not. The pot simmers all day, the contents shifting as whatever can be found or spared is tossed in. The result is always gray, always bland, always just enough to quiet the rumbling in your belly. Sometimes a scrap of pork rind or a single turnip floats to the top, and you watch it, hoping it will land in your bowl, but it rarely does. Meat is for the masters or for feast days, rare as miracles and just as quickly gone. Once in a great while, there is meat in the stew, but you do not ask where it came from. A chicken that stopped laying, a rabbit trapped in the garden, or, in the most desperate times, a cat or a rat, skinned and boiled until it is unrecognizable. Hunger is the great equalizer. It does not allow for scruples. You learn to chew with your mouth shut, to swallow without thinking, to forget what you are eating even as you choke it down. Ale is the drink of the poor. The water is too dangerous, too full of invisible threats, worms, fever, death. Instead, you drink ale so thin it is more water than beer, barely enough to cloud your mind or dull your aches. It tastes of old grain and sour barrels, and you learn to ignore the grit at the bottom of the cup. On the rare days when there is wine, it is watered down, saved for the sick or the dying, and never offered to you. Sometimes, when the kitchen is empty and you are certain no one will notice, you sneak a spoonful of drippings from the roasting pan or lick the bowl after the master's cake has been mixed. It is a small, guilty pleasure, quickly overshadowed by the fear of being caught. The mistress is always watching, always ready to accuse you of stealing. A servant caught with her hand in the pantry can be dismissed on the spot, or worse, turned over to the constable for theft. You know women who have lost fingers for less. Feasts are for the masters. On holidays or saints' days, you watch as the kitchen fills with smells you have only dreamed of: roast goose, honey cakes, pies crammed with apples and nuts. You carry the platters upstairs, bowing low, your mouth watering, your stomach clenched with longing. After the feast, if you are lucky, you are allowed to eat what is left, gnawing on bones, scraping out the dregs of sauce with your finger, collecting crumbs as if they are jewels. The children you nurse are often better fed than your own. You watch them grow fat on rich milk, their cheeks pink and round, while you remember the sharp bones and hollow eyes of your own babies, hungry for a drop of what you give away every day. You do not dwell on the irony. It is just another bitterness to swallow, like the bread and the ale and the endless gray pottage. Every meal is a reminder of your place, last to eat, last to be served, first to be blamed when there is not enough. You learn to be grateful for scraps, to savor the rare taste of something fresh or sweet, to keep your hunger quiet and hidden. Hunger becomes a part of you, another ache to be carried, another pain to be endured. And so you eat what you can, when you can, never full, never satisfied, always thinking of the next meal that may not come. You swallow your hunger with the same resignation as you swallow everything else, and you survive, one stale crust at a time. You think you have known cold, but nothing compares to the bite of laundry day. It does not matter whether it is the middle of winter or the height of summer. Your world is water, and water is always too cold, too heavy, too merciless for a woman with aching bones and torn skin. The task of washing is a never ending trial, a ritual of suffering that seems older than memory itself. The pile of laundry is always growing. Dirty linen, soiled shifts, towels black with soot, baby wrappings stiff with sour milk, and worse. You drag the basket outside, your shoulders already tight with dread, your arms trembling from fatigue that never seems to leave you. Sometimes you hope for rain, because at least then you can pretend the water will wash away the misery instead of making it worse. But rain or shine, the work does not wait. Laundry is as much a constant as hunger or fear. You haul bucket after bucket from the well, each heavier than the last, your back twinging with every step. The water is icy, seeping through your shoes, numbing your toes until you are not sure they are even there. You kneel by the tub, your skirt sodden, the mud working its way up your legs. If you are lucky, there is a sliver of soap left, gray, hard, and barely scented, or a fistful of ashes to help scrub away the worst stains. You start with the baby's linens, because the mistress is most particular about these. Swaddling cloths are inspected daily, and even a faint yellow stain is enough to earn you a scolding or a fine. You scrub at them until your fingers are raw, twisting and wringing until your arms shake. The cloth tears easily, worn thin by constant washing, and every rip means another lecture, another punishment, another reminder that nothing you do is ever enough. Next come the master's shirts, the mistress's underthings, the endless stream of towels, aprons, and rags. Some stains never come out: blood, sweat, grease, the marks of a life spent working and suffering. You scrub anyway, hoping to make things clean enough to escape notice. Your hands bleed into the water, turning it pink, and you wonder how much of yourself you lose to these chores, day after day, year after year. When you finish scrubbing, you must rinse. This means hauling more buckets, plunging your arms into the freezing water again and again. The wind cuts through your wet clothes, stealing the little warmth your body can generate. You grit your teeth and keep working. If you pause, if you cry, if you show any sign of weakness, you know the other servants will talk, the mistress will hear, and the punishment will be swift. Wringing out the clothes is another torment. The fabric is heavy, waterlogged, pulling your joints until you fear they will snap. You twist and squeeze, ignoring the pop in your wrist, the ache in your elbows. Every time you think you are done, you find another shirt at the bottom of the basket, another petticoat caked with dirt. There is no end to it, only the promise of more tomorrow. When the washing is finally done, you hang everything on lines strung between crooked posts. The clothes hang limp and gray, flapping in the wind, taking forever to dry in the damp air. If it rains, you must bring them in, only to hang them again later. If it is sunny, the linen dries stiff as a board, scraping your skin raw as you fold and stack. Sometimes birds leave droppings on your hard work, and you have to start over. Sometimes a sudden gust sends a sheet tumbling into the mud, and you curse your luck, though never allowed. There is no reward for this work. No one praises clean laundry. They only notice what you missed. The mistress will run her hand along a hem, inspecting for spots, sniffing for sourness. The master complains if his shirts are not soft enough, if his cuffs scratch his neck. The baby, of course, soils his swaddling within minutes, crying and writhing, the endless cycle beginning again before the last load is even dry. Your own clothes are rarely washed. There is never enough soap, enough time, enough care left over for you. You wear the same shift day after day, scrubbing at the worst stains when no one is watching, knowing it will never be truly clean. The other servants are the same. Everyone smells of sweat and smoke, of work and worry, of a life that leaves no room for luxury. At the end of laundry day, your hands are shredded and red, your nails split and bleeding, your skin stinging with a pain that is almost as sharp as your hunger. You sit for a moment, staring at your hands, wondering if they will ever be soft again, if they were ever soft to begin with. But there is no time for such thoughts. There are floors to sweep, babies to feed, supper to make. The laundry never really ends. It only pauses, waiting for another chance to remind you of your place. And so you endure it, as you endure everything else, with gritted teeth and bowed head, because this is your life, and there is no escape, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. The world of the masters is distant and closed, but your own world, the world of servants and wet nurses, is kept alive by whispers and half-spoken stories. You learn quickly that survival depends not only on work, but on knowing what is said and what is not. Who can be trusted and who will carry tales straight to the mistress. In a house where privacy is a joke and comfort is a memory, conversation is a lifeline, thin, frayed, sometimes as bitter as the bread, but a lifeline all the same. You speak in hushed voices, mostly in places where the masters do not listen, behind the kitchen door, at the well, in the shadows beside the garden wall. The kitchen is safest late at night when the embers have faded and only the tiredest of maids remain, hands too busy or minds too numb for more than a few quiet words. These moments are stolen, snatched between tasks, filled with nervous glances at doorways and windows. The news comes piecemeal, always muddled. A peddler's daughter saw the priest stumble after too much ale. The baker's apprentice claims the old lord on the hill is dying of a mysterious swelling. Someone's cousin in the next village heard of a miracle, an ox born with two heads, or a well that runs with wine instead of water. These stories change as they travel, growing wilder or darker with every telling. You know better than to believe everything, but you listen all the same because the truth is often less important than the distraction. Gossip is currency, traded as carefully as bread. Who is in favor? Who has fallen out? Who has a new bruise or a new secret? You listen and share, but always with caution. The wrong word in the wrong ear can lead to trouble, extra chores, a beating, even dismissal. You have seen more than one woman turned out for something she said or something she was accused of saying. In this world, guilt and innocence mean little, only caution matters. Yet, there is comfort in these exchanges. Sometimes you and the other women share memories of better times, stories from childhood, songs remembered from home. These are the softest moments when for an hour you can almost forget the ache in your back or the hunger in your belly. Laughter comes rarely, but when it does, it feels like a small rebellion, a momentary defiance of the drudgery that binds you all. You learn news of your own family this way, if you are lucky. A cousin's husband has work in the next town. A neighbor's child survived the fever. A distant relative is dead. No surprise, just another name added to the list of those lost to cold, hunger, or childbirth. Sometimes you hear nothing for weeks, months, and the silence is heavier than words. You fear that when the news finally arrives, it will be only more loss. The men gossip too, but their world is different, harder, quicker to anger, less willing to forgive. They trade news in the stables or by the fire, voices low and sharp. You catch snatches, rumors of war, of new taxes, of the king's latest folly. Sometimes, when the ale has flowed too freely, the talk grows bold, almost dangerous. You learn not to linger when the talk turns to rebellion or old grievances. The master has ears everywhere. Children carry gossip with an innocence that is almost cruel. They repeat what they hear, mixing truth and fancy, blurring lines with a carelessness that could get a servant whipped or a family ruined. You watch them, and sometimes you envy their ignorance. More often, you fear it. In their small mouths, secrets become weapons. Despite the risk, you cling to these conversations. They are your link to the outside world, your one reminder that life continues beyond the four walls of this house. In the flickering candlelight, you trade stories and fears, hopes and disappointments, knowing that tomorrow will bring only more of the same. Sometimes, when the day's work is done and the house is silent, you replay these conversations in your mind. The laughter, the stories, even the sorrows, they are proof that you are still alive, still human, still part of something larger than the work that consumes you. Yet, even in conversation, there is always a shadow, a word overheard, a glance that lasts too long, a silence that follows a careless joke. These are dangers you cannot ignore. You measure your words, shape your stories, keep your real thoughts hidden behind safe smiles and practiced answers. Still, the gossip goes on, as it always has and always will. It is the lifeblood of the poor, the only inheritance you can be sure of, the only escape that does not end in punishment or loss. And so you listen, you share, you survive, one whispered word at a time. If you had the freedom to choose your fears, you might have chosen wolves or highwaymen, those dangers that are dramatic, obvious, lurking in the stories told by candlelight. But the true dangers in your life are not wolves at the door or bandits in the night. The true dangers are much closer, much more familiar, always wearing the faces you see every day. The masters are the most immediate threat. Their power is absolute, their moods unpredictable, their sense of justice always bent in their own favor. The mistress can dismiss you for almost any reason, for a look, a word, a stain, a crying baby at the wrong hour. She can dock your wages, withhold food, spread rumors about your character that cling like mud to your reputation. You live under her gaze as a mouse lives beneath the eye of a hawk, still silent, praying not to be noticed. The master's dangers are different, sharper, and for you, more dangerous still. Sometimes it is a careless word, a half joke about your appearance or your origins. Sometimes, when he drinks too much, his hands linger when he hands you a coin or checks the temperature of the milk. There are rumors about masters who take liberties with the help, about wet nurses sent away after becoming trouble. You do not have the luxury of innocence. You know how quickly a rumor can become a sentence. You learn to step aside, to make yourself smaller, to laugh at his jokes, and never, ever meet his eyes. But your fellow servants can be just as dangerous. The household is a world built on scarcity, and scarcity breeds suspicion. There is never enough food, never enough warmth, never enough praise from the mistress or the master. Every crumb you eat is a crumb someone else will go without. Every mistake you make is an opportunity for another to gain favor at your expense. The other women watch you, eyes narrow, calculating. You try to keep your secrets, but secrets do not stay hidden for long among the poor. Sometimes the rivalry is quiet, a pot left unwashed in your corner, a whispered word about your tardiness, a missing piece of bread. Sometimes it is louder, a sharp shove at the well, a shouted accusation when the mistress asks who spoiled the milk or lost a set of linen. You learn to move carefully, to measure your words, to avoid alliances that might later be used against you. There is a hierarchy among the servants, as rigid and merciless as any in the master's world, and every rung is slippery with envy and fear. Animals, too, are a constant source of danger. The rats in the cellar are bold as thieves, gnawing through wood and cloth, carrying fleas and disease wherever they go. The mistress curses their droppings, but it is you who must trap them, dispose of the bodies, scrub away the filth. Sometimes a rat bites your hand, and you watch the wound for days, terrified that it will swell and fester, that you will be crippled and useless. Cats are supposed to help, but they are just as likely to steal your scraps or scratch your arms bloody. The dog in the yard is half wild, chained and snarling, lunging at anyone who comes too close. You give him a wide berth, remembering stories of maids mauled or left scarred for life. Beyond these daily threats are the invisible dangers, the epidemics that roll through villages like storms, striking down young and old, rich and poor, though never quite equally. When news comes of fever in a neighboring town, you feel a chill that has nothing to do with the wind. You know what it means. The dead cart, the hurried burials, the prayers shouted in empty chapels. Sometimes it is plague, sometimes the bloody flux, sometimes a sickness with no name at all. The masters barricade themselves in their chambers, burn herbs, carry amulets and dried flowers. You and the other servants are told to wash more, to keep the house clean, to stay away from strangers, but you all know it is useless. Disease is a shadow that slips beneath every door, settles in every bed. You pray because there is nothing else to do. The worst part is the blame. If a child sickens, the first finger is always pointed at you. You must have done something wrong, breathed wrong, looked wrong, carried a curse from your own home. The mistress inspects you for the mark, some sign that evil lives beneath your skin. You know women who have been thrown out, beaten, even drowned for less. Witchcraft is the word they use when fear becomes too much to bear. At night, you lie awake and listen for the sound of rats, for the creak of the master's step, for the whispers of the other servants. You count the dangers and know that you will never reach the end of the list. You are always alert, always cautious, always one breath away from disaster. It is exhausting living in a world where everything is a threat, where even the air can kill and your own shadow can betray you. Still, you endure. You learn to hide your fear, to smile when you must, to keep secrets and to listen, always listening for the first sign that something is about to go wrong. You know that in this life, the only safety is in silence, in caution, and in the prayers you whisper to yourself as you drift into another uneasy sleep. Evening does not bring peace. It brings only a different kind of work. As the sun sinks, dragging its pale gold behind the roof thatch and setting the fields aflame for a few brief moments, you do not stop to watch. You have no time for sunsets. The day's labor shifts, but does not end. The bells toll again, calling the masters to prayer, the servants to more chores, and the restless to their beds. You are not restless, you are only tired, bone tired, a weariness so deep it feels like it might outlast the body it fills. The house changes at dusk. Shadows stretch across the floors, swallowing crumbs and lost pins, hiding the dirt you never had time to scrub. The air grows colder. In winter, the chill creeps in under doors and along windowsills, biting your fingers until you can barely feel them. In summer, the warmth lingers, mixing with the stench of sweat and the sourness of old milk. Lamps are lit, fat tallow candles that drip and gutter, spreading more shadow than light. Sometimes the mistress insists on using a lamp with real oil, but you are rarely allowed to touch it, lest you spill a drop. Your work is far from done. The baby cries again. Of course he does. His hunger does not respect the hour or your fatigue. You must climb the stairs once more, every joint aching, every step reminding you that your body belongs to someone else. In the nursery, the mistress watches you with narrowed eyes, as if daring you to fail. The baby fusses, and you hold him to your breast, praying he will latch quickly, praying he will be soothed, praying you will not fall asleep standing. Sometimes, in the deepening gloom, you feel as if you might dissolve into the darkness, just another ghost drifting through the halls, always needed, never seen. You rock the baby gently, humming an old song, one you can barely remember the words to. Your arms ache, your back protests, but you do not complain. You would not dare. If the baby does not settle, you will be blamed. If you look too tired, you will be blamed. If the baby's eyes are runny, or his belly gripes, or his skin is flushed, you will be blamed. After the feeding, you return the baby to his cradle, tucking the covers in with numb fingers. The mistress fusses, checks his brow, arranges the folds just so, as if order alone can keep death at bay. You stand silent, waiting to be dismissed, eyes on the floor. When the mistress finally waves you away, you leave the room quietly, closing the door behind you with a care you have learned through endless repetition. Downstairs, the house is quieter, but the work continues. The kitchen must be swept, the fire raked, the remains of the meager supper cleared away. If you are lucky, there is a scrap of bread or a swallow of broth left. If you are unlucky, there is nothing but the memory of what you cooked for others. You scrape the plates clean, stack the pots, try not to notice the rumbling in your belly. Other servants drift through the rooms, their faces shadowed and tired, their words few. No one lingers. The day has stripped everyone down to their weariness, leaving little energy for anything but sleep. You glance at them and see yourself, shoulders hunched, eyes rimmed red, hands red and cracked and trembling. The laughter and gossip of the day are gone, replaced by a silence as thick as the darkness outside. The animals make their own music. The dog barks at the edge of the yard, chasing some phantom that only he can see. The rats skitter in the walls, their tiny claws a constant, maddening presence. Sometimes you hear the foxes cry out in the fields, and you shiver, not from fear, but from the sense of wildness that you have forgotten how to feel. When you finally collapse onto your straw pallet, it is not with relief, but with resignation. There is no softness in your bed, no comfort, just a brief pause before the next round of duties. Sleep is not guaranteed. Sometimes the baby's cries pull you from the edge of rest again and again. Sometimes the mistress sends for you to warm water or fetch a cloth. Sometimes your own body rebels, aching breasts, a throbbing head, cramps so sharp they steal your breath. There is always the fear of what the night might bring. Sickness often worsens in the dark, and you listen for the sound of coughing, for fevered cries, for the hurried footsteps of someone seeking help. The house is full of dangers, a sudden fire, a drunken master stumbling from his chair, the threat of thieves or madmen slipping through the shadows outside. Sometimes you worry about witches and spirits, those old stories your mother used to tell, the ones that seem closer now that you are alone in the dark. And even if the night passes quietly, you know that morning will come too soon. The same bell will ring, the same routine will start again. You will rise and feed, and work, and clean, and fear, and hope, and lose, and endure. But for now, you lie still, listening to the sounds of the house settling, of the wind pressing against the shutters, of your own breath slowing as sleep, or something like it finally overtakes you. You do not dream, not really. Dreams are for people who have hope. You have only the promise of another day, another night, another round of exhaustion and fear stretching on without end. If there is any mercy in the night, it is well hidden. Sleep, when it comes at all, is nothing like the sweet oblivion, the priest's promise, or the soft surrender that poets sing about. For you, sleep is just another battlefield, a nightly struggle with worry, pain, and all the lingering ghosts that daylight cannot chase away. You do not sleep alone. Your pallet is squeezed among others, a patchwork of straw beds and thin blankets, where bodies press close for warmth, but never for comfort. The air is thick with the odors of sweat, damp wool, and the faint, bitter tang of fear. Someone snores, someone coughs, someone mutters nonsense words into the darkness. Every sound is familiar. Every sound is a reminder of how little space you are allowed in the world. There is always someone awake, a restless child, an old servant with aching joints, a woman crying softly into her pillow, careful not to wake the mistress or the master. You try to quiet your mind, to shut out the noise and the ache, but the day's sorrows and tomorrow's worries creep in anyway, slipping beneath your eyelids as soon as you close them. Some nights, the baby's cries cut through your dreams, sharp and insistent, pulling you out of half sleep again and again. You stumble through the darkness, groping for your shift, your feet numb on the cold floor. The nursery is a world of shadows, the baby a small, angry bundle of hunger and need. You feed him with hands that shake, your eyes half closed, your mind drifting between sleep and waking. Sometimes you doze sitting upright, only to startle awake, terrified that you have let the baby slip, or that you have been caught dozing by the mistress. There are other nights when no one calls for you, when the only sounds are the shifting bodies of the sleeping poor and the distant creak of the house settling. These are the most dangerous nights, for then you are left alone with your thoughts. Grief creeps in with the cold, crawling up from your bones to settle behind your eyes. You remember your own children, their faces blurred by time and hunger, their voices lost in the endless murmur of memory. Sometimes you see their ghosts in the darkness, small hands reaching for you, accusing you, forgiving you, always hungry. Nightmares come often, and they are always the same. You are running through endless halls, searching for a crying baby that you cannot find. You are drowning in a river of dirty water, the weight of laundry and linen dragging you down. You are standing before the mistress and master, accused of some crime you cannot name, your tongue glued to the roof of your mouth, your legs rooted to the ground. You wake with a start, heart racing, sweat chilling your skin. You have seen Were the Nightmares, of course. There have been nights when a servant woke screaming, clutching at invisible wounds, or when the fever took hold of a child and the whole room was roused by coughing and the sickly stench of vomit. Sometimes someone dies in the night, a servant, an old dog, a baby whose breath simply stops. The house is silent for a moment, then the routine resumes, unchanged by loss, unsoftened by grief. On rare nights, exhaustion overtakes you completely, and you fall into a black, dreamless sleep, deeper than any you remember. You wake from these hours more tired than before, as if sleep has stolen what little strength you had left. Your body aches from the hard ground, from the awkward press of too many bodies in too little space. You rub your eyes, stretch your limbs, try to remember if you dreamed at all. It hardly matters. The bell will ring soon, calling you back to the world of work and duty. You wonder sometimes how long a person can go on like this, sleeping in stolen fragments, always waking to fear and hunger. You envy the dead their rest, their freedom from aching bones and endless worry. But envy is a sin, and the priest says you should pray instead. You try, whispering half remembered prayers into the darkness, bargaining for a night of peace, a morning without pain, a dream of your children's faces smiling. But the night is long and mercy is short. You lie awake, staring at the blackness above, listening to the rats in the walls and the wind outside. You count the hours by the tolling of the far off bells, by the ebb and flow of breath around you. Sometimes, just before dawn, you finally drift into sleep, a thin, brittle thing, easily shattered by the first cry from the nursery or the heavy tread of the master's boots overhead. This is rest in your world, a brief surrender, broken and incomplete, filled with echoes of all the fears you cannot escape. You wake, and the struggle begins again, as relentless as the turning of the earth, as unforgiving as the life you live. There is no escaping the church. Its shadow falls across every field, every street, every house, even the cramped rooms where you and the other servants sleep. The bell that marks your day is the church's bell, and its chime seeps into your bones until you can almost feel it pulsing with your own heart. You are told that faith will save you, that suffering is holy, that your place at the bottom of the world is part of some grand, mysterious plan. But for you, religion is not a comfort, it is a duty, a ritual, and a source of fear as constant as hunger or cold. Sunday is never a day of rest. The mistress is insistent, no matter how tired, how ill, or how dirty you are, you must wash and make yourself presentable, don your best, which is never good, and walk to the cold stone church. Sometimes you stagger through the mud, your skirt heavy with last week's rain, shivering as you line up with the other servants and pour. The gentry sit up front, warm under furs, eyes glancing back at you with polite boredom or undisguised suspicion. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of tallow, wet wool, and incense. Candles flicker, painting saints on the walls with trembling gold, while the priest stands above you, voice booming from the pulpit. He speaks of sin, and you listen, counting every mistake you have ever made. The crust of bread stolen from the kitchen, the moments of anger, the flashes of envy at the mistress's clean hands and soft shoes. You try to remember if you have gossiped too freely, if you have wished harm on anyone, if you have failed in your work. You are told God sees everything. You hope he is kinder than your earthly masters, but you doubt it. Confession is both a terror and a relief. You kneel on hard stone, whispering your failures to the priest, another master, another judge. Sometimes you feel his disappointment more sharply than you feel the mistress's scorn. He tells you to pray, to fast, to accept your station. You do as you are told, not because you believe, but because there is no other option. The church is everywhere, in the bread you eat, in the water you draw, in the air you breathe. It is said the devil finds work for idle hands. In your world, there is never any danger of idleness. Religious holidays are less a time for celebration than for extra chores. On feast days, you are expected to clean and cook twice as much. The masters demand special breads, richer foods, extra candlelight. You work through the night, stumbling with exhaustion, while the priest reminds everyone that suffering brings you closer to God. You do not see any sign of holiness in the grease that will not come off your hands, or the blisters rising on your feet. There is comfort sometimes in ritual, lighting a candle for your lost children, muttering a prayer for their souls, touching the cold stone of the church wall, and feeling, for a moment, that you are part of something larger than your misery. The old women teach you charms and blessings, half pagan, half Christian, whispered in the corners where the priest cannot hear. You cross yourself at every grave, every new mother's bed, every shadow that lingers too long at the window. But religion is also fear, fear of hell, of the devil, of curses and omens. The stories are everywhere. The baker's wife lost her baby after quarreling with a neighbor. Witchcraft, everyone whispers. The mistress's daughter fell ill after someone spilled salt on the threshold, surely a sign of sin. You are told that women like you, poor and desperate, are especially vulnerable to the devil's touch. If a child in your care sickens or dies, suspicion falls quickly, like a shadow in the dusk. You pray for forgiveness you are not sure you need. You pray for mercy you have rarely seen. The priest says the meek will inherit the earth, but you have only ever inherited work and worry and a hunger that nothing seems to fill. On the hardest days, when your knees ache and your back burns and your arms tremble from another night with too little sleep, you close your eyes and pray for something to change, a sign, a miracle, an end. The church marks every stage of your life. You are baptized before you can speak, taught to fear before you can understand, married, if you are lucky, under its watchful gaze, and buried in its ground, whether you want to be or not. The prayers at your funeral will sound much like those said every Sunday, promises of rest, of reward, of a better life to come. You hope it is true because you have never known such things in this world. Still, you obey, you kneel, you confess, you pray, and when you return from church, footsore and hollow eyed, you pick up your chores where you left them, telling yourself that the saints and angels are watching, that they see your suffering and will remember you. It is a small hope, but it is the only hope you are allowed. Your body is your greatest asset and your heaviest burden. Every day it is tested, strained, bruised, worn down by endless work and the indifference of those who own your hours. There is no escape from pain, only the daily calculation of which ache is worst, which wound can be ignored, which complaint will get you nothing but scorn or worse. You are always tired, but it is a fatigue that goes far beyond mere sleeplessness. It settles deep in your bones, a dull ache that lingers even when you sit down, even when you try to rest. Your back is stiff from hauling water and bending over fires. Your knees crack with every stair you climb. Your shoulders throb from carrying laundry, buckets, or a squirming baby up and down, hour after hour. Sometimes, when you think of how much work you do, you wonder if you will ever move without pain again. It seems unlikely. Blisters are the least of your troubles. Your hands are swollen and red, fingers split and raw from scrubbing with cold water and rough soap. In the summer, the skin peels and stings from constant exposure to lye. In the winter, your knuckles split open and bleed, leaving smears of red on the linens. There are always new cuts, new bruises, burns from the stove, and scrapes from the stone floors. You cover them when you can, ignore them when you must. A servant with too many complaints is a servant on her way out. And yet there are pains you cannot show. There are days when your head throbs so badly that your vision blurs and you can hardly keep your eyes open. You blame the smoke from the hearth or the lack of food, but you know, deep down, that it is something else, a kind of exhaustion that medicine cannot touch. If you collapse, you risk punishment, not sympathy. Women's troubles are not spoken of, except in whispers behind the laundry or at the well. Your monthly bleeding comes with cramps that double you over, waves of nausea, and a weakness that makes your arms tremble as you knead bread or scrub floors. There are no rags fresh enough, no soap strong enough to keep the secret, so you learn to carry on through pain, hiding stains on your apron, ignoring the heat that rises in your cheeks when you know someone has noticed. If you complain, the mistress scolds you for weakness. If you cry, you do it in silence. You worry about worse. Every cough could be the start of something deadly: consumption, lung fever, some disease with no name but a certain ending. If your breasts swell too much, become hot and red, you fear the fever that follows, a sickness that could end your usefulness, your position, your life. If the milk dries up or turns sour, you know the baby's health will suffer and the blame will fall on you. There is no margin for error. Injury is a constant companion. A twisted ankle from a slip on the wet stone floor, a finger slammed in a heavy chest, a gash from a broken pot, or a rusty knife. Infection follows quickly, wounds that swell and ooze, skin that goes red and hot, fevers that burn and leave you shivering. There are no doctors for people like you. At best, you get a poultice made from bread or cabbage leaves, a whispered prayer, or a talisman against evil spirits. More often, you get nothing but the order to work through the pain. Childbirth is another kind of terror, a risk that never leaves you, even when you are not the one bearing children. You have watched women die in labor, watched babies arrive too early or too late, limp and silent. The screams echo through the house, mixing with the cries of the newborn and the hurried, helpless prayers of the women who gather to help. You know that, should you fall pregnant again, you will be expected to continue working until the very moment your water breaks, and perhaps even after. The thought is terrifying, but you cannot afford to refuse the risk. There is no healing, only survival. You do not recover from illness or injury. You simply grow used to it, adapt, and push on. You learn to live with the pain, to measure your days in aches and wounds. When you see another servant limping, another woman bubbled over with cramps, you do not offer pity, only the hard comfort of understanding. You know there will be no respite, no help, no warm bed or gentle hands, only the endless demand to serve and the unspoken knowledge that when you can no longer work, you will be replaced. You sometimes dream of a world where pain is rare, where sickness is met with care and not accusation, where injuries are tended instead of ignored. But in your waking life, the pain is a fact as inescapable as hunger or cold, and you survive not by overcoming it, but by enduring it. There are days when you wish you could rest, just for a few hours, to let your body heal to feel something other than exhaustion and pain. But the work never stops, and neither do you. You are a vessel, a tool, a body whose suffering is expected, ignored, and, in some ways, required. And so you endure, as you always have, because that is the only choice you have ever been given. In your world, there are only two true seasons: the one you are enduring and the one you dread. The passing of the year is measured not by festivals or harvests, but by the shift in what pains you most: cold, heat, hunger, rot, or biting insects. You are as much a creature of the weather as the rats in the cellar or the crows in the field. The seasons do not bring relief, only different forms of hardship, and whatever month it is, you dream only of surviving until the next. Winter is a lesson in misery. The cold is not something you can escape. It creeps through the walls, finds every crack in the thatch, and settles in your bones. You sleep fully dressed, huddled close to the other servants, but your feet still ache with chill, and your fingers never seem to thaw. You wake with the sun, what little there is of it, already dreading the first plunge into icy water, the numbness that follows you all day. The windows rattle in the wind, letting in drafts that bite like teeth. Sometimes the water in the bucket freezes overnight, and you have to break the crust of ice with a stick before you can clean anything. Washing is agony, your hands raw and burning, the cold so deep it feels like it could crack your bones. Firewood is always scarce, and the master's family comes first. If the logs run out, you must burn peat or even dry dung, which stinks and fills the house with choking smoke. Your eyes stream, your chest aches, but you keep going. At night, you dream of warmth, but you wake to frost creeping along the inside of the window panes. Food is scarcer in winter. The bread is harder, the stew thinner, and the vegetables have long since rotted or dried up. Sometimes you chew on old roots, your jaw aching, the taste sharp with bitterness. Hunger makes you lightheaded, and you move through your chores in a fog, praying you do not faint or make a mistake that will cost you more than you can afford. Winter is also the season of sickness. Coughs and fevers spread from palate to palate, and the weak do not last. You listen at night for the rasping breath of someone who will not make it to morning. Every ache, every chill, every swollen joint could be the beginning of the end. The masters barricade themselves, blaming the servants if sickness appears in the nursery. You carry the blame along with your pain. But then, finally, spring arrives, not as a blessing, but as another set of problems. The snow melts, turning the yard to mud that sucks at your shoes and splashes your skirt with filth. The air is damp, the cold replaced by a wet chill that soaks into everything. The house smells of rot and mildew, and every surface is sticky or slimy. Rats emerge in droves, hungry after the long winter, bold enough to run across your toes while you scrub the floor. With spring comes hope, but it is a dangerous hope. There is still too little food, and your body is exhausted by the winter's deprivations. Sometimes, the first green things to sprout are weeds, and you eat them anyway. Sorrel, nettles, anything to fill the ache in your stomach. The baby is often sick in the spring, and the mistress blames you for every cough or rash. You wait for the first true harvest, counting the days, but spring is a season of waiting and enduring. Summer brings its own torments. The heat is relentless in the kitchen, where you stand for hours over boiling pots. Your shift sticks to your skin, and sweat stings your eyes. Flies swarm everywhere, on your food, on your face, on the baby's open mouth. The smell of sweat, spoiled milk, and human filth clings to every room. Washing is no easier. The water is warmer, but the labor is endless and every muscle burns. If you are lucky, you might dry a few rags in the sun, but the dust settles on them before you bring them inside. With heat comes rot. Food spoils quickly, and you must be vigilant for mold and maggots. The cheese oozes in the pantry, bread grows green and blue, and meat, when you have it, turns foul in a day. You choke down what you can, spitting out the worst. The baby is fussy, nursing more often, and your milk seems to vanish under the constant demands. You worry that your body will give out, that you will not have enough to feed him, or that you will catch some summer fever and be blamed for his sickness. Insects are everywhere in summer, biting, stinging, crawling over your bare arms as you work. You wake with red welts and scratch until you bleed. At night, the buzzing of mosquitoes keeps you awake, and during the day, you chase away flies from the baby and the bread with the same desperate motion. Autumn arrives like a sigh of relief, but it is only a brief pause before the next winter. The fields fill with the smell of damp earth and dying leaves. You pick what you can from the garden, storing away roots and beans, drying apples and herbs, always afraid there will not be enough. The days grow shorter, the nights colder, and your mind drifts back to the coming frost, the hunger and pain you know so well. Through every season, there is no real respite, only a change in the kind of suffering you endure. You learn to predict the weather by the ache in your joints, by the taste of the air, by the complaints of the old women. Sometimes you catch yourself wishing for a storm, a flood, a drought, anything different, anything to shake loose the endless sameness of your struggle, but nothing changes except the shape of the hardship. The seasons turn, and you turn with them, surviving one misery just long enough to greet the next. If joy exists in your world, it is measured in the smallest of things. No one tells you to look for happiness, and certainly no one expects you to find it. Yet sometimes, in the long parade of labor and loss, you stumble across a moment so brief and so slight that it feels like a secret, something almost too fragile to name. These are the things you hoard, not in pockets, but deep in your memory, to take out and examine when the darkness grows too thick. The rarest joy is a full belly, however fleeting. Once or twice a year, a feast leaves scraps enough for the servants to eat almost as well as the masters. You seize on roasted bones with a desperation that would embarrass you if everyone were not the same. There is laughter, real laughter, over shared bites of meat or a sliver of pie that escaped the master's notice. For a moment, you chew slowly, savoring every taste, every crumb, pretending, just for that instant, that you are more than a pair of hungry hands. Sometimes you find delight in the weather. A sunny day after a week of rain means the laundry will finally dry, your bones will finally warm, and the air will not reek of rot. On those days, you pause, just for a breath, a minute, a stolen moment, and let the sunlight touch your face. You close your eyes, remembering a time when you were a child, when you played in the dust, barefoot and laughing, before you understood what life would demand of you. You treasure small victories, a shirt scrubbed clean enough to escape the mistress's sharp tongue, a day when the baby feeds well and sleeps long, a night when no one wakes you with a scream or a summons. You notice the ordinary miracles, the bread that rises, the child that laughs, the fire that catches on the first try. Each of these is a blessing, though you dare not call them that aloud. Even luck in your world is something to be handled quietly. Companionship is another small light. When another servant shares a secret or a joke, when you find a friend among the endless faces, it softens the weight on your shoulders. There are evenings when a song drifts up from the kitchen, low and hesitant at first, then stronger as others join in. The words do not matter. The tune is old, the rhythm steady, the act of singing a defiance in itself. Even if the masters scowl, even if the song is quickly hushed, it echoes inside you long after the candles are out. You find comfort in small acts of kindness, a crust of bread slipped to you by a kitchen maid, a patch for your apron sewn by an old woman with crooked fingers, a look of real sympathy when you limp through your chores. Sometimes an older servant will tell you a story from her youth, something ridiculous and impossible, a tale of magic or love or riches lost and found. You know these stories are lies, but you listen, and for a moment you believe. Nature offers its own joys. In spring, you steal a sprig of wildflowers for your hair, just to remember what beauty feels like. In autumn, you pocket an apple from the orchard and eat it alone, away from the eyes of the mistress, the juice sweet and tart, a secret feast. Sometimes you watch a bird flit through the garden, or see a fox slip through the morning fog, and you remember that the world is larger than this house, larger even than your sorrow. And then there are moments with the child you nurse, when he looks at you, not as a servant, but as warmth, as comfort, as the source of all that is safe and good in his world. You feel something almost like love. It is dangerous, this feeling. It reminds you of your own children, lost or far away, and the pain that comes after is sharp and sudden. But in that instant, when a tiny hand curls around your finger, When a sleepy smile breaks across a chubby face, you allow yourself to feel tenderness, even pride. No one else sees this, but it is yours, a secret you do not share. These joys are never enough to outweigh the pain or erase the fatigue. You do not pretend that they are, but you collect them anyway, scraps and shards of happiness to line your nest of suffering. You hold them close on the hardest nights when the wind howls and your body aches and you wonder if you can endure another day. You tell yourself that these moments are proof that you are still alive, still human, still capable of feeling more than pain. You have learned not to ask for more. Contentment is what you can steal, what you can find, what you can make for yourself in the cracks and corners of a life built on endurance. In the quiet moments, between the chores and the tears and the long hours of waiting, you remind yourself that even the smallest light is enough to keep the darkness at bay, at least for one more day. If there is any time for hope, it is at the end of the day, in that quiet hour when the world is half asleep and the weight of your life settles most heavily on your chest. You lie on your straw mat, staring at the darkness above, hands folded on your belly or pressed between your knees to chase the chill. The house is mostly silent now, just the soft sighs of sleeping bodies, the faint hiss of dying embers, the distant, hopeful hoot of an owl in the barn. It is in these moments, when you have nothing left to give, that your mind drifts away from the routine of suffering and turns, almost against your will, to the idea of something better. Your dreams are not extravagant. You do not imagine yourself as a lady in silks, lounging in a sun drenched chamber with sweetmeats at your elbow and rings on your fingers. The stories told by minstrels, knights and castles, fortunes found in wells, love that lasts forever, seem as distant and unlikely as the stars. Your hopes are smaller, but no less urgent. You dream first of your children, even if they are gone, buried, given away, lost to fever. You see them as they might have been, round cheeked and laughing, chasing chickens in the yard, or clutching your skirts with sticky hands. Sometimes in your dreams, they are alive and well, their bellies full, their feet warm, their futures brighter than your own. You imagine returning to them, coins tucked in your apron, a little food hidden in a cloth, enough to last through the next hard season. You imagine being able to hold them as long as you want, without the fear of a master's summons pulling you away. Sometimes you let yourself know that you will see them again soon, that the master will keep his promise and pay you fairly, that the mistress will not find fault and cast you out before your work is done. You count the coins you have managed to save, small and worn, each one a tiny, shining step toward home. You dream of a roof that does not leak, a patch of garden that grows more than weeds, a bed of your own, just for you and your children, no other mouths to feed, no other bodies to warm. You dream, too, of a life where your body is your own, where no one measures your worth by the milk you produce, by the strength of your arms, or the speed of your work. You imagine waking up without pain, walking through a day without fear. You dare to think of being respected, or at least left in peace. These are dangerous dreams, the kind that can lead to bitterness or madness if you hold them too tightly. Still, they come to you unbidden and persistent. On rare nights, you imagine a future where things change, not just for you, but for everyone. You dream of a time when servants are not blamed for every misfortune, when women are not traded for their labor or their bodies, when hunger is not a constant companion. Sometimes you even hope that your children might live to see this world, even if you do not. You think of all the stories whispered in the kitchen, of other women dreaming their own secret dreams, and you wonder what might be possible if you could join your hopes together. You know that hope is a luxury, that it can be as cruel as hunger if you let it grow too large. The world you live in does not reward dreamers. Still, you cling to these thoughts, turning them over and over in your mind like river stones, smoothing away the sharp edges of reality. They help you fall asleep, even if your rest is brief and troubled. Before you finally drift off, you pray, not in the formal words of the church, but in the silent language of the desperate. You pray for one more day of strength, for your children's safety, for a little less pain. You ask the saints to remember you, to see your suffering, to let your small hopes survive the night. You promise, as you do every night, that you will try again tomorrow, that you will keep going, that you will not let the darkness swallow you whole. And for a few moments, before sleep pulls you under, you believe that something better might be possible, that maybe, if you endure long enough, you will find your way home, that your children will remember your voice, your touch, your sacrifice, not just your absence. When morning comes, hope will fade with the light, and the world will return to its endless demands. But for now, in the hush between exhaustion and sleep, you allow yourself to dream. If you let yourself think too far ahead, the future unspools before you like a long, muddy road that leads only deeper into darkness. It is a road paved with the bodies of those who went before you, mothers, nurses, servants, all worn down to nothing by years of labor and want. In a world where every season is a trial and every day is a struggle for survival, growing old is not a blessing. It is a sentence, and it is a sentence you see carried out all around you. You watch the older women in the household, those who have served longer than you, who have carried more babies, scrubbed more floors, outlasted more winters than you can imagine. Their bodies are bent and twisted, joints swollen and stiff, hands gnarled like roots. Their faces are maps of endurance, lines etched by wind, smoke, and in endless frowning. Their eyes are sharp, not because they have learned to see beauty, but because they are always searching for danger, for a dropped crumb, for a master's frown. There is no retirement for women like you. When a wet nurse's milk dries up, when her arms cannot carry a child, or her knees give way on the stairs, there is no gentle easing into old age, no soft bed or grateful children to care for her. You have seen it too often. The mistress declares she is no longer needed. The master grumbles about her usefulness, and one morning she is gone. Sometimes she leaves quietly, clutching a small bundle of clothes, the rest of her belongings left behind as payment for debts or as charity. Sometimes she is sent out with a warning or with nothing but a curse. The road out of the house is cold and hard. A few end up begging at the church door, hands trembling, backs bowed, hoping for a crust from the same mistress who once commanded their labor. Others find themselves in the poorhouse, a place that smells of hopelessness and old sickness, where the beds are hard, the food is thin, and the company is nothing but other broken souls. Some simply vanish, swallowed up by hunger, by cold, by the indifference of a world that has no place for women who can no longer serve. You have watched them go, one by one, and each time you wonder how many years you have left before you join them. You count the aches in your joints, the gray in your hair, the nights when sleep refuses to come, and your heart pounds with a panic you cannot name. You wonder if your children, wherever they are, will remember you kindly, or if they too will be forced to choose survival over compassion when the time comes. Sometimes you imagine a different ending, a small room of your own, a little garden to tend, perhaps a neighbor who remembers your name and greets you with kindness. But even in your dreams, this vision is hazy, uncertain, quickly swallowed by the reality of what you have seen. You know that your value in this world is measured by your labor, by what you can still give. When you can give no more, you become invisible. No one's mother, no one's nurse, no one's responsibility. Old age brings other fears as well, the fear of sickness with no one to care for you, of falling and not being found until it is too late, of dying in the cold and the dark and being buried in a pauper's grave with no prayers, no candles, no one to mourn. You think of the women who linger on the edge of madness, their memories lost to hunger or sorrow, their tongues thick with old songs no one else remembers. You wonder if that will be your fate, if someday you will wander the lanes, muttering to yourself, frightening children, and being pitied by no one. You see the warning in every reflection, your hands shaking as you pour water, your breath coming shorter at the end of a long day, the pain in your back that does not go away with sleep. You know the signs, and you do not need a priest or a healer to tell you what they mean. Time is not your friend. It is a thief that takes a little more from you each day. And yet, even in this fear, there is a stubbornness that remains. You watch the older women, and you see how they endure, how they snatch at small joys, an extra cup of broth, a patch of sunlight, a moment's laughter with a child. You learn from them to keep your secrets, to hide your pain, to keep moving even when every step is agony. Perhaps, you think, there is a kind of dignity in survival, even if the world never sees it. Still, as you close your eyes at night, the future looms large and grim. You pray, not for a long life, but for a merciful one, a few more years of strength, a chance to see your children again, an ending that is gentle or at least quick. Above all, you pray that when your usefulness is gone, you will not be forgotten entirely, that someone, somewhere, will remember that you once mattered. But you know, as every wet nurse before you has known, that the world is rarely so kind. And so you endure. This is the truth beneath all the stories, beneath the sermons, beneath the empty promises and the broken prayers. You survive, not because anyone wants you to, but because you must. There is no happy ending for you waiting just over the next sunrise, no miracle to lift you from straw to featherbed, from drudgery to ease. The world you inhabit is made of mud, and it clings to you as stubbornly as your own shadow. Your life is a pattern that repeats itself until the threads wear thin. You wake in the darkness. You work until your body aches. You serve until there is nothing left to give. You are hungry. You are cold. You are afraid. Sometimes, for a moment, you are allowed a taste of laughter, a crumb of kindness, a single ray of sunlight. But these are never enough to change the shape of your days. Every small joy is borrowed, every comfort fleeting, every dream fragile as the crust of yesterday's bread. You are not alone in your struggle, though in the worst moments, it often feels as if you are. All around you are other women with stories much like yours. They hide their pain behind worn faces, measure out hope in careful sips, and hold on to dignity with hands that are red and swollen and cracked. You speak to them in whispers, in sighs, in the silent language of shared suffering. Together, you shoulder the burdens the world refuses to see. The masters go on as they always have. They rarely look you in the eye, rarely wonder about your life, rarely pause to think of what becomes of the women who keep their babies alive, their homes warm, their tables full. You are a fixture, a necessary inconvenience, a name that will not be written in any ledger or carved on any stone. They may thank you when it suits them. More often, they will blame you for every mishap, every shadow that falls across their ordered world. You wonder sometimes if your life has meant anything at all. Not to the masters, perhaps, but to the children you have nursed, your own and others. You think of the moments when a tiny hand grasped your finger, when a tired head nestled into your breast, when a pair of eyes looked at you with a trust that was as pure as it was brief. These moments are not enough to build a legacy, but they are all that you have. Maybe, just maybe, in some quiet way, your care lingers on in another life. The world around you remains unchanged, as if it barely notices your existence. Plagues come and go, harvests fail, wars begin and end, and the church bell keeps tolling the hours, as indifferent to your suffering as the stones in the road. The seasons spin their endless wheel, dragging you from one hardship to another, and each year you feel yourself fading just a little more, another thread unraveling in a tapestry no one will mourn. And yet, you keep rising each morning. This is not hope. Not really. It is simply what is required. You learn to expect nothing, to ask for little, to savor even the smallest moments of reprieve. You become an expert at disappointment, a connoisseur of endurance. There's an irony here, a dark humor that you and the other women share when no one is listening. You laugh sometimes at the absurdity of it all, the endless dirt, the thankless work, the fact that even the saints and angels seem to look away. If there is meaning in your suffering, it is not for you to find. The church tells you that patience and humility are their own rewards, that heaven will make up for what earth has taken. The masters assure you that everything is as it should be. The old women say nothing at all. They have seen too much, lost too much to believe in promises. Still, in the darkest hours of the night, as the baby's cries echo through the house, and you stagger once more to offer comfort you can barely muster, you remind yourself, you have survived another day. You are still here, still standing, still breathing the damp, smoky air. The world may not thank you or even notice you, but for now, you exist. You outlast the pain, the cold, the hunger, and the endless grinding repetition. You are still, somehow, alive. That is all. It is not enough, but it is everything.